So hi, thanks for joining me for my professional quickie. I do this once a month, and I'm Amy with Birds and Bees and Kids. And so this is a 10 minutes of teaching situation and then a 20-minute Q&A session where you can ask me anything. It doesn't have to be related to what we talked about or what I taught. I think these bite-sized moments together are really helpful because I think that this topic, talking about sexual behavior in kids, can be pretty intense and overwhelming. So my aim is to chunk it down into little pieces so you can digest them, put them to work if you're working with kids. I just empower you with this information. I just got off the phone with a gal. We did a quickie. She's a parent, and she got some advice from her pediatrician, and it just sent her down a rabbit hole that she did not need to go down. And it was really a bummer because what her kid was doing was completely typical stuff, and it just ended up with her thinking that her kid, who was 6, 7 at the time, was a budding young pedophile, which was absolutely not at all what was happening. So the more people know this stuff, the better. Okay, so let's do this. Hi everybody. And this is being recorded. So if you need to bail, feel free to bail. Let me share my screen. So desktop. All right. Oh, look at that. Isn't that pretty? Okay. So we're going to focus on kids ages 6 to 12, and these are kids that are not in puberty. So puberty has not started yet. Last time we did little kids birth to like 5. And what you'll notice as we go through these is that per age group, the behaviors they are that they're engaging in get more and more adulty looking or teenagery looking. And so this age group in early elementary school, these are the things that are really common to them. The thing to remember here is that they're not in puberty. So they're pre-puberty. So they don't have all those let's get busy hormones pumping through their veins. So the first thing that you'll notice about kids in this age group is that they have questions about relationships, about sex, about puberty, about periods, about pregnancy. So they're noticing more and more out in the world. They're seeing romantic relationships. They are curious about sexuality and sex-related stuff. This is the time that many of you may remember that kind of heightened curiosity about like, how are babies made and what's sex mean? And then of course, as we got older, like puberty, right? Like my body's going to change. What does that mean? What's that going to look like? Definitely periods, because periods are confusing, right? Like who bleeds? Like what's the bleeding? Because I bleed when I get a cut, right? And so understanding that that's a natural process of a body with ovaries and a vagina and a uterus. And then of course, questions about pregnancy. So with a 6-year-old, that's going to look really different. Than a question about sex from a 6-year-old is really going to be more around about baby making and maybe like, why do people do that? A 8-year-old is going to have questions more around, okay, yeah, babies, and then why would people do that? And then a 12-year-old who's not in puberty is going to be really interested in the more social emotional aspects of sexuality. By the time they're, 6 actually, but 12, they should definitely know what sex is and why people have sex and that people have sex for pleasure. And so it's going to be like if you have a 6-year-old that is really interested in like, well, why do people have sex for pleasure? And when do I get to do that? And what is that like? And how am I going to fall in love? And seems a little obsessy about it and using some language that is maybe more like middle schoolery, 5th gradery, then there might be concern there. So anyway, so I'm kind of off track there. So that's the first thing. Questions, sex, puberty, pregnancy, relationships. That is the first thing. And then the next thing is, oh, my slides are out of order. How good for me. Hi, this is what we're talking about. Okay, next up, kids at this age will experiment with same age and oftentimes same gender children. And we're talking about, this is happening during games. Usually when kids are doing sexual experimentation in this age range, it's really like science. It's an experiment. It's part of a game. It's not like if a 14-year-old and a 15-year-old were experimenting. They're not real. They're experimenting like in the grown-up sense of the word. They're testing the waters. They're actually doing grown-up ish sexual stuff. With kids in this age group, usually what happens, and you may remember this, is like kids will play games like getting married, and it's two girls, and so they're pretending one's a bride and one's a groom, and there might be some kissing, there might be some body rubbing, because that's what happens after you get married. So it's part of a game. We expect to see this, kids will at this age will play doctor and have full medical exams. The same age, same gender. The gender piece sometimes gets people twitchy, but it shouldn't, because when kids are engaged in game playing, gender is really not at, in this particular way, it's like acting, right? So they're going to assign a role to someone. This mom that I was just talking to, she said that her son, when he was 7, was playing a game with a neighbor friend that was breastfeeding, and one of them was the baby, and they're pretending to breastfeed. So that's an example of a game that has some sort of sexual connotation to it. Not really, because breastfeeding, not sexy, not to me. So the way you want to think about this is that it's a game, it's experimentation. And if it seems intense, or if it seems like it's planned, or if nobody's having fun, then there might be something up. So, and then the other thing we worry about too is like repeated experimenting games that involve private parts in this age group would also be concerning. So next thing, Amy watches the clock. Look, okay, so the kinds of things they're going to be doing. We expect there to be some kissing, some kind of practice kissing, kind of teasing kissing, touching privates. Flashing is really popular because it's hilarious. I don't know if you knew that. Again, the kissing, touching is all in that sort of experimentation, like game playing. So again, like the getting married, what happens at the end of the wedding ceremony, there's kissing. Or if you're boyfriend girlfriending and your girlfriend girlfriending, your boyfriend boyfriending, and you're role playing this game, then there's going to be some kissing and maybe some touching. In this age group, this is not, we don't want to see it repeated. And again, it's really just it's like they're acting. And you may remember this from your childhood playing these kinds of games. I played a game called Jim and Steve with my neighbor, Ashley. Jim was my boyfriend and Steve was her boyfriend, I think. I can't remember who had who, but we played these elaborate games with our invisible boyfriends. And so occasionally someone would be Jim and someone would be Steve. But this is really super common. And I don't remember kissing, but there might've been some body rubbing stuff going on, but definitely the role playing, right? So we're role playing this romantic thing with Jim and Steve. The flashing part, flashing butts, flashing shirts, hilarious, right? So you see how this is all in this realm of like game playing. It's again, like not serious business, not serious business. Oh, and I'm totally happy if you want to throw like examples of role-playing games or anything like this that you've heard of or maybe experienced. You don't need to say it was you. Just examples would be great because it's going to help everybody the more examples we have. Okay, and then the last piece is that by the time kids are 6 or so, they've learned that we masturbate in private. That's not something people do in public. And in particular with kids, it's not something kids do with other people, that it happens when they're in private, alone, in their bedroom, in the bathroom. It's not something that happens at school, on the school bus, outside, in the grocery store, like that. In the car when other people are around. So they have that, they're capable of having that sense of public and private. So if you have a kiddo that is, 7 or 8, or even 8 or 9, like in that age range, and they can't keep their hand out of their pants, so they're bumping and rubbing on stuff, then they probably need some help. Usually when we see kids that are in this age group and they're masturbating or touching their privates in public and they can't be redirected, there's usually some kind of anxiety thing going on. Sometimes it's an indicator of sexual abuse, but kids use masturbation and self-touch to calm down, because it's self-soothing. And this like in this age range, as they get older and as they're heading into puberty, they'll begin to have some more sexualized thoughts and thinking about, Jim or Steve while they're getting busy. But it's usually more around, this just feels good to my body. It's just something I do. Boys, people with penises, people with clitorises, everybody does it. Totally healthy, typical, normal, expected sexual behavior in everyone. So I mean, I think I did what I wanted here with this. Did I? Yeah, there's everybody all in one role. So let me think if there's anything else. So, you know, as with most of the sexual behaviors in kids, like what we want to watch out for is that anything that seems adult-like. So if, you know, like in the Jim and Steve game, if, you know, Ashley was being Jim and I was being, I almost said Steve, which could probably happen, but I was being myself and Ashley was being Jim, and there was talk of blowjobs or something like that, right? Like that is not something kids play in a game that's like in a game, right? Like you hear that, you're going to be concerned. So anything that sounds adult-like, you're going to hear language more here in this circumstance than you are going to necessarily see anything, especially as kids get older. They tend to be a little more sneaky about this. And of course, you know, we stop paying hyper attention, right, to them. And, you know, talking with kids about this, I think it's really important to let them know that it's, you know, it's normal to be curious about relationships and sex and puberty and pregnancy. Absolutely normal. Here are the safe adults for you to talk to. Internet is not the place to get this information. Here are the books we have. You know, if you're working with families, if kids in your care are having conversations about pregnancy and sex, and you know that's happening on the playground or whatever, then the parents all absolutely need to know so they can get ahead of the conversations. Right now, kids are seeing so much pornography, you can't even imagine. And so they talk to each other about it. So if you know that there's questions about sex happening or pregnancy or anything, the parents absolutely need to know that this is happening so they can take care of the conversations. You know, if you work with kids, you can't have sex talks with them. It's just, as you know, I don't need to tell you this, but it's completely inappropriate. So you need to punt over to the family. Of course, if you encounter anything that is out of age range, or, you know, that adult concern, adult-like, repeat is happening, then that's a different story, right? That's signs of either sexual abuse or some kind of sexual problem. You can talk with kids about that only in the sense that you're just going to kind of see if you can figure out what's happening and figure out what kind of help that kiddo needs. So I'm trying to think if there's anything else. Oh, how about some examples? So we did Jim and Steve. That's a good one. Getting married. Here's an example. So trigger alert. Here's an example that is sexualized, but also actually and concerning. It kind of falls within the realm of this experimentation and this questions and discussions. So there were three kids at a Boys and Girls Club, and they were, I can't remember, nine, we'll say 9 because I can't remember. They were 9-ish. And the staff person looks over and she sees there's 2 boys and a girl, 2 people with penises and one without. And one of the boys is standing up and the other one is on his knees in front of the other boy. And then this is either the 2 penis havers, and then the girl was here watching. And so it was clear to the staff person that the boy on his knees was demonstrating oral sex to the other kid. And nothing, pants were on, nothing was happening. So there's this conversation going on, and the gal was looking pretty like, oh my God, like concerned. So obviously, I don't need to tell you that's all concerning. But if you think about just the circumstances of it, they were clearly trying to figure something out and talking about it and explaining it. So you may or may not see something like this, but the reason I'm telling you this is because this is a really good example of people who don't know what they're talking about trying to figure something out. Does that make sense? So everybody got help. The demonstrator had seen porn, had been exposed to porn, his older cousin had shown him porn. So everything got taken care of. Everybody was fine. So I'm just curious, and you know, I don't know how many of you are, there are only 19 of you. Do you have, if you want to, you know, use your voice or use the chat, if you have any examples of something that would be considered maybe typical or even not typical, because we can always talk about that, and any just questions too. So, okay, let's see. And if you want to unmute, you can unmute and just talk at me. I'm happy to hear your voice and to see you.
I can go.
Yeah, thanks.
Sure. So I have an almost 6-year-old and a 3.5-year-old,
Okay.
where and we have a 3-month-old. So we like to just give them baths together because it's just easier. And my daughter will like pull at his penis,
Yeah.
and they'll like, they'll like touch each other's. And so we tell them like, no, these are private parts.
Yeah.
It but and then now we're thinking, do we have to just give them separate, bath times?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I don't really know. We
No.
weren't sure how to go about it.
Yeah. Yeah. No, thanks for asking that. So that's super common, like with little kids, like for those of you who've been with me before, really common sexual behaviors. They're just curious. They're really little. So it's too hard for you to give them separate baths, right? I mean, God, you have a 3-month-old. I was a one and doneer. So anyone who has more than like 2 kids, I'm like, oh. So what you need to do is tell them really clearly before they get in the bathtub. It's like, hey, the rule is we don't touch each other's privates. Kids can get hurt when we play games with privates. So that's the rule. And then say, what's the rule? And they say, no privates touching. And you're like, great. If you forget the rule, then you're going to need to get out of the bathtub immediately. And so the 6-year-old forgets the rule and you say, all right, you're out, and get them out. And they like to be in the bath together. Right, it's fun. So they might need some redirecting. So it's like, hey, what's the rule? Okay. And they're like, oops. And you can give them like a warning. All right, if it happens again, what's going to happen? Can't take a bath. You might if they can't stop, if it's compulsive, then you are going to need to maybe have them take separate baths. But one of the things here is that you need to be like, hey, what's the rule? Like completely chill, neutral voice. Because if you're like, what's the rule? What's the rule? What are you doing? What are you doing? They're getting a lot of attention from you. And so you need to be like, hey, what's the rule? And you can be like, hey, what's the rule? But don't go all freak show on them because they really want the attention, especially with the new baby. So so just see how it goes. And if like was it the 6-year-old that's grabbing the penis? Yeah. If they can't stop, then there might be something up. But my guess is that if you're just like, these are the rules, what's the rule? Here you go. Here's the consequence. Oh, what's the rule? All right, out you go. You can't take baths together for a week or whatever, and then it should be fine. It should be fine.
So I know my daughter will ask, actually, she'll be like, oh, well, why does it hurt? Why would it hurt us?
Because it's a tender part of the body. It's like, just like you wouldn't want someone sticking a finger up your nose or in your ear, same deal. That's the rule. And then if she's like, why? Then you say the magical parenting phrase, because that's the way it is.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, it's one of my faves. It's one of my faves. Okay, let's see. So let me just hold off. Any questions about the older kids stuff? Sorry, I don't understand Zoom. I'm just gonna scroll back. Any questions about the older kids stuff? Because I got a 6-year-old question. Okay. Our 6-year-old daughter was exposing herself to a friend who's a boy. It was outside in our backyard and I saw it happen and probably overreacted. I told them that the 4 places it's okay to have their privates out in the bathroom by themselves, bath or shower by themselves, doctor's office with a trusted adult like a parent. Is this the right approach? I feel like I body shamed them. Eek. So yeah, I think that it's good. That's good that you gave those, like, these are the places it's okay to show your privates. And if you part of this is tone. So if you were like, and the only places it's okay to show your privates are the blah, the blah, the blah, the blah, then that's the shaming part. If you were like, hey, okay, so you're gonna go repair now. So you just want to go back and just say, hey, I freaked out. I am so sorry. I was just really worried because it's not safe to show your privates to somebody else. Kids can get hurt and, that's just the rule. So our privates are private. So really sorry, I freaked out. Just want to remind you, normal to be curious. That's why we have books. That's where you can get the information about what people's different bodies look like. And you better get books. It's so amazing is the book. So you can just repair, like anytime you freak out in parenting, you can just go back and say, oh my God, I lost it. I'm really sorry. I was surprised. I was upset. I was worried. Here we go. Say what you needed to say in a calm way. So yeah, my pleasure. I'm all about calming people down these days. Cool. Any other questions? concerns. I'm gonna make this go back. All right, here we go. Gabriella. 7-year-old is touching his penis over the clothes, especially outside and playing at the park with his friends. I think it's anxiety, as he's a very anxious boy, but it seems he doesn't even notice. We have said to him a few times that his privates are only to touch at home in private, but he seems he can't help it. What do you recommend of this if due to anxiety, and why would he do that? Yeah, that kind of behavior usually is due to anxiety, and it's completely unconscious. It feels good. It's self-soothing. It calms him down. He doesn't even know he's doing it. He's probably been doing it for so long. It's like any kind of tick, kids pick their nose and don't know they're picking their nose. So the reason he would do it is because it just feels good and it calms him down. Because it does feel good to touch your privates and it does calm people down. He probably needs some help. Because at 7, he should know that, we don't, when you say, hey, it's not okay to touch your privates in public, it's something you can do at home, and you've redirected him and corrected him kindly and he's not able to stop, he probably needs some therapy just kind of in general to help him deal with the anxiety. But a couple things you can do with a kiddo like that is the minute you see and this takes a lot of work, right? Like the minute you see him heading for his tallywhacker, get in there and redirect him and just like say, hey, can I have a high five? And redirect him and give him some positive attention to help him get out of the habit. Getting him a koosh ball or a piece of really satiny, satiny material that he can tactilely and touch. So if he's heading for his crotch, you can say, hey, do you have your koosh ball or your satin today? And give him something else to do to help him feel better. But it's not necessarily, I'm just sorry, spitballing. I don't think it's a sign of sexual abuse necessarily, but it also could be. So just some poking around a little bit about like what's happening with his privates, if anyone's touched him there, anything like that, just to see. I'm assuming you're a professional, Gabriella. So does that help? And anybody else who's working with kids, feel free to chime in. I'm not the only game in town for sure. So yeah, lots of kids are anxious and lots of kids touch their privates to calm down. It's very, very common behavior. And it doesn't necessarily mean anything, but if there are other behaviors going on in addition to that are sexual or just, trauma, anxiety stuff, he probably needs a little bit of help. Okay, sexual jokes to me, in front of me and the kids, 6 and 3.5. Thinking they don't understand. I think it's inappropriate and getting them used to it. So depending on how sophisticated the jokes are, like if it's full of like innuendo and they just can never connect the dots on the one hand, okay, but the bottom line is you don't like it and you want him to stop. So he needs to stop. And he's right. The 6 and 3-year-olds aren't getting it, but at some point they are, and he needs to stop before they do get it because they're going to be grossed out and pissed off. So you might talk to him about that and just say, look, like they're eventually going to understand this, and we don't want our kids repeating that. That's the other thing, because they may say something like blowjob doesn't sound like anything, right? To a 3-year-old, sounds like a whole lot to a 53-year-old. So just pull the repeating thing and then say, you know what, find other jokes to tell me. Like you can tell me all the dirty jokes you want when we're not like in front of the baby, right? The baby's not going to notice. Yeah. So yeah, cool. Okay, cool. All right. 5 minutes. I'm all yours. I'm all yours. Don't be shy. I'm trying to think, we have this other slide that I'm sure is tantalizing you. So this is what's going to happen next time is late elementary. So we'll talk about that later. I'm going back to this. Oh yeah, age appropriate books. The Roby Harris books. If you go to my website, birdsandbeesandkids.com, on my website and my bookstore, there's a ton of books. All the books by Roby Harris are great age by age books. English and Spanish versions. Also, there are books about consent and safe touch there as well. And then kids in this age range, they need to have books about puberty. They need them by about age 9, because the average age girls go through puberty is about 10. And so and boys are older, like that 11-ish, but everybody needs to know what's going to happen before it happens. And since these questions about puberty are really common, we want to get ahead of that, right? So they know what's coming before it happens. I mean, I know there are probably some of you who maybe had your period before you knew what that was, and pretty traumatizing to be suddenly bleeding. Or as one mom told me, she thought that she'd eaten spaghetti for dinner the night before and thought the spaghetti was coming out of her hoo-ha. So we don't want that. We don't want that. And whether your kid has a penis or a vulva and a vagina, everybody needs to know everything about everybody else's body. There's a new book called the Everybody Book, which is a great companion to It's So Amazing and It's Perfectly Normal. It's an LGBTQ friendly, gender neutral language, really addresses intersex kids, trans kids, and all kinds of stuff like that. So it's a really good companion. It doesn't have, for my liking, it doesn't have enough detailed information about, puberty and all the things. So I really like it as an addition to those other books that I recommend by Roby Harris. Okay, I have more things to tell you. Any other questions, or anybody have an example of a 6 to 8 year old, or want to ask about a 6 to 8 year old behavior? Any specific book you would recommend for the 7-year-old? Anxiety by Touching His Privates. Oh yeah, Carrie, I did get your email. I haven't responded yet. I can't think of anything that really addresses that, because I think it's anxiety related, so it's not really sexual. You might look at, I can play it safe, or maybe C is for consent, but I can't think of any books off the top of my head that address that specifically. If you go look on my website again and see what's there. I feel like a consent and body boundaries books would be a good place to go, but I'm sure it's not The Stork and It's Perfectly Normal have sections on that, but that kid I think needs therapy. So, all right. Okay, ready? Here we go. Yes, Carrie, I got your email. You're going to get me instead of the voice memo I was going to send you. Pee party question. The short version is that my almost 7-year-old daughter has been having what they call pee parties with her 5 and 7-year-old boy cousins. My 8-year-old daughter told me this, and she defined a pee party as when you show each other your butts. In this context, I'm assuming butt means genital area. How should I address this with both my daughters? Should I bring it up with the 8-year-old? Should I bring it up with the 8-year-old and what to say to my 7-year-old? She doesn't know that I know. Okay, so pee parties are really common, and the age range of the 7 to 5-year-olds, this is kind of comes under the flashing kind of thing. They think it's hilarious. When you show each other your butts, they may be peeing, because the boys peeing, the penis havers peeing is fascinating to the sitter downer peer, right? So showing each other butts, maybe showing each other their genital areas. Your 8-year-old is old enough to be like, this is not okay, and you guys are being gross and weird. And so she told, which is good news, because you need to know when people are having pee parties. So I would talk to your 8-year-old separately from your 7-year-old. And I would just say, if you didn't already, like, thank you so much for telling me. You're right. Pee parties are not a good idea. It's not okay or safe to play games with privates. And it sounds like that's what's going on. So thank you so much for telling me. So I'm going to talk to your sister. I am going to let her know that I know about the pee parties. And I think you should tell her that I won't say that it was you that told. And then when you go to your 7-year-old, you're just going to say, hey, I heard that y'all are having pee parties. Tell me about that. You're not in trouble. Just curious. See what she says, and ask her, like, whose idea was it? How do you feel about it? And see what she says. When you say whose idea was it, she's going to say, I don't know, or they're going to do this, their idea. And that is usually tells you that it's this game they've been playing. If she's really clear and says things like, they make me do it, I don't like to do it, I don't want to do it, then that's a different story. You do want to say really gently, like, so do you like doing this? How do you feel about it? See what she says. And if she's like, no, I don't, they make me do it, then that's a different conversation. But my guess is that it is just like a game. And of course it needs to stop. So those people cannot be in the bathroom alone together anymore. You can just say, you know what, we're going to change up the rules. You know, y'all have forgotten the rules. So it's not okay for you to have pee parties anymore. So when you're in the bathroom, you need to be in the bathroom alone when you're with them. And then the best part is telling your sister, sister-in-law, brother, brother-in-law, the other parents, what's been going on, and finding out those kids' side of the story. So yeah. And then you read, it's so amazing. Yeah, I would read it. Yeah, good. I'm glad you told your sister. So yeah, I would read it again with them. And there's a safe touch and boundaries section in there. You might just want to revisit that. And there's also a book called C is for, it's called Consent for Kids. That's new. That's terrific. And talks about this kind of thing. Totally love it. It's really good for kids ages 8 and up. You could do it read it with your younger kids. I don't know how much is going to like enter into their brain pan. All right. Okay. So I'm going to wrap us up, but before I do, so I just want to, it's advertisement time. Let's see here. So I have the full class of this Preschoolers, Private Parts and Playmates coming up on the 29th of April. And I have 3 different payment levels. It's 85, 65, 45. It's recorded. It's the full meal deal. It's everything that I've been teaching in chunks all in one go, plus, plus, plus. It's specifically designed for professionals, but I know lots of y'all are parents, and I'm totally happy to have you there. You will become a mini sexual behavior in children expert. So would be happy to have you there. I'm going to grab the link so you can go look. God, I almost feel like I'm 400 years old when I'm doing this. Copy. Did anything happen? Oh, sorry, just a minute. Goodbye. Why can't we get the hang, get the hang of this? There we go. Oh, look, it's in there twice. So if you want to go take a peek while we're wrapping up, I would be happy to answer any questions. And I'm going to stop the sharing and make that go away. And we're all in the big gallery view. Anyway, so yeah, that's what's coming up next. If you're interested, be happy to have you along for the ride for that. And then next time we're talking about older kids who are in puberty. So 9 to 13 that are in puberty. So we change things up. Gabriella, the workshop is for, it's focused on 5 and unders, but it also includes everybody's behaviors, because if you have a kid that's exhibiting, a preschooler that's exhibiting a behavior that's typical for a kid that's in puberty, it just makes it easier to diagnose, right? So if you're like, oh, that is a 12-year-old in puberty behavior, that's concerning. So my goal with this class is to help get things less gray. I can't get black and white, and it's really to help folks who work with kids to assess behavior and know when to get them help. And I teach a script for correcting and an acronym for assessing behavior. So it's pretty detailed, and it's one of my favorite things to teach, especially to parent people with young kids, people who have young kids and people who work with young kids, because it's just going to see you through in a lot of different ways. So thanks for asking that. I'm going to stop recording because I can. All right. See y'all later.